Okay, after this short little reset, I hope we're all back. I hope I unmuted myself. Yes, I did. The next session is Davide presenting a real life attack scenario on a mainframe. Um, I think David will tell you more about it, but it's actually based on real world examples. So I would say, David, you can take it away.
Hi everyone, you probably saw me running back at the door. I forgot to close it before starting presenting. I hope you can see my first slide and hear me well.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So this is from zero to special. We are gonna start with nothing and use and borrow a lot of techniques from Phil's presentation with some other stuff. And I usually present this kind of exercises with like some custom code here and there. I also try to push my own tool because I like it, basically. But this time is going to be just running off-the-shelf tools from GitHub. Some of the stuff you've already seen today, some stuff is new. My name is Davide Girardi. You can call me David. I work as a penetration tester and I do my fair share of adversarial simulations. It means that a customer pays us to simulate a realistic attack. So we do a lot of the stuff you see in Hollywood movies and a lot of the stuff that criminals do, except when it's breaking the law for real, like we don't kidnap people. But we cheat, lie, and try to get access in any way, physically, via phone calls, dropping software here and there, or USB keys in the parking lot. And I enjoy the part where you keep your access there, you expand your control over the target network and get access to the money or intellectual property, you name it. And this means that I'm the guy going after a mainframe, not only because I like it, but it's because if you have a mainframe, your good stuff is there. Usually, and you've seen that during Phil's presentation and also in Jake's presentation, it's hard to talk about the mainframe to people from the distributed world because there's a lot of stuff they're not used to. These warning signs is usually for them, and in this case, it's for you guys because we're gonna play around with stuff that is used mostly in the distributed world because we start our attack from a machine on the network, and then we gain access there. So feel free to type in the chat or just shout out something if something is unclear. Henry is going to monitor that because I can see it right now, and we can take it from there. The structure of this presentation is fairly simple. First of all, understanding why we do security testing, penetration testing, attacks, something very technical. And then we go through a simple methodology of going ahead with a penetration test or a realistic attack, because the steps are basically the same. It changes. The only thing that changes during a penetration test is that you don't try to be stealthy, you just try to be quick. Then we go in the demo, which is the biggest part, and then we wrap it up with how you could avoid having someone like me going around your mainframe. So this is something that is pretty common. Why should I care about hacking stuff? I want to build things. I want to write application. I want to maintain my infrastructure. Well, there are criminals out there. My company is working all the time on incident response because people get hacked in different ways. And they are just after the money. So either they find you how much money you get and they lock you out of your infrastructure or just steal it. So you need to learn to think in that way. You need to master those techniques so you can test them, see if you're vulnerable, and prevent that before it's too late. Because, yeah, dealing with an incident is not something you want to do. It takes a lot of time. You're going to go down. You're going to have big losses. And I mean, my feeling is that the mainframe world is where the Windows, Linux, macOS world was like 15 years ago, maybe more. There's not that much focus on breaking things and the defensive side of security. And they learned that the hard way. They learned that by having issues. And we should be smarter and try to learn from their mistakes and start testing and understanding what can go wrong in our infrastructure. Because most of the time, our focus is on knowing how much licenses cost we have, knowing that we have the best uptime ever. But there are pieces of the puzzle that are not meant to be misused. And so you don't know what to expect when you start combining stuff. And this introduces very well the concept that mainframe, while big, is just a computer. Maybe multiple of them because you have L parts, but it's still a machine that takes code and instruction and it does it. Henry told me the other day when we were discussing, what was it? A computer does what you tell it to, not what you want to, which is very, very real. So when you start combining different type of enterprise software, there can be some ripple effects that you don't expect and that people like us tend to think about very, very likely because we have like more a malicious mindset. And I mean, you still have passwords, people logging on with their usernames and passwords, and we're going to discuss about it later a little bit. And also you have an awesome feature. It's a giant machine that can do a lot of stuff. And sometimes you start enumerating things and the mainframe doesn't, when you start searching stuff in a mainframe, it's quick, it's incredibly quick. And it can be a fortress, but it's not a fortress by default. You have to do your hardening jobs. You have to work on that. So given my premises, so basically the idea is understanding what can go wrong before it's too late. Let's see basically how a generic attack works. You learn as much as you can about your target. So you read documentation, you read websites, job offers, and then you start mapping the attack surface in a technical point of view. We have been there. We have been doing nmap scanning, real-time enumeration, user enumeration, and all that stuff. We're going to do that later. And then you find a possible vulnerability, and you exploit it. And when you exploit it, if it goes well, you're going to have a wider access. So you need to start again and learn from and take a look at all the stuff that you see and see if you can go further away in the process. Nothing super complex. It's a very simple concept. Learn, do one attack, do it well, or a few attacks. If you gain more access, go ahead and continue there. I heard a noise. Are there any questions? I guess no. Then we can start hacking. So some geography. Here I have my 3270 emulator. Here I have a Linux shell that we're going to use, especially at the beginning. And up here I have a text editor. So don't care about this part. It's just a few notes for me, so I don't skip things to do. So let's start by seeing what's on the mainframe. We use nmap, which is the tool Phil has been using too, which is something that probes for open ports and does even other stuff. And we have some FTP, we have SSH, Telnet access. This is clear text, 3270, no web server today. And this 2023 is misdetected, but I mean, let me do it live. We're going to see that it's 3270 over an encrypted connection. So, okay, we have basically 1, 2, 3 different types of access that we could use. FTP, as I said, SSH, and 3270 clear text or encrypted. Okay, let's go ahead and do something a little bit different. So we've been discussing about learning about your target. What I learned about this mainframe is that they have a naming convention, which is ng, and then 2 letters from the name and 2 letters from the surname. So in my case, would be ng da gi. And since I have no idea about what accounts are valid there, I just generated 2000 something random combinations of letters and see if we can get something. And how I'm going to do that, I'm going to test with passwords now. Well, actually, I'm going to test with one password. If it's there, yeah. And the password here is summer 2020. Why summer 2020? Because, again, reading documentation, I found a guide how to connect to TSO, and I see that these people has password pre-prompt and they use passphrases. So we're going to use a tool which is called Potator. It's freely available on GitHub. And I'm going to use that via the FTP login module, which basically takes my list of users and my list of passwords and tries to log on. And we're going to do that with 20 threads just to gain some time. So let me copy this and paste it here. Copy-paste hacking is the best. And probably we're not going to lock out any account because we're going to test one password. Oh, here it is. You probably heard my phone buzzing, and it's buzzing again, and it's buzzing again, and it's buzzing again. This is because, and we're going to talk about this later, I've set some monitoring on my mainframe. And when some stuff is going the wrong way, then I get a message. But yeah, this is just a teaser that we're going to see later. So we have this user. Oh, stop it. Yeah, I tried to log in with like 2,000 something accounts with the wrong password, but I found one, just one. And summer 2020, I don't in the Netherlands, but here in the Nordics, summer is the best. Everyone likes summer, so summer 2020 is a good. And this is my puppy complaining now. Summer 2020 is a very good candidate, and it's very important to know who you're attacking, where they are, because they are going to choose different things. So let's try to, well, log on to TSO. If my network can manage all this stuff. Okay, so TSO, user ID, ng Kali, and then summer, hold on, summer 2020. Not authorized to use TSO. And that's the reason why I like to use FTP sometimes, is because it's kind of subsystem agnostic. If you have a successful logon on FTP, you could end up in different places. Okay, so this is not a good way. Let's try Unix. And there we had SSH, which was open. So I'm going to log in the SSH as ng Kali at zzz. That's the name of my mainframe. And that's my password. Okay, we are here. We are in /home, and that's our username. /home is interesting because it's not something which you get by default. Usually it's /u/home. So there's some configuration going on. If I take some time here, I'm going to see they have auto mount of the home file systems, the ZFSs. That could be an interesting thing. But in this case, I'm going to run enum like Phil did and put it there. Actually, you know what? Let me copy paste. So I'm going to, this down is another window of my terminal. I'm going to copy the enum script, which I already prepared here, to the mainframe. Put my summer 2020 password there. Now it's up. And now I can just use it. Yeah, it's executable. So enum.rx. And to gain some time, actually, let's run it like that. So you can enumerate different things. To gain some time, in this case, I'm going to focus on USS users. Let's make this bigger. So we run it fairly quickly. It's doing a few syscalls to get some information. Here I have some different users. We have, that's probably admin user. That's interesting. Here we are, and that's our user ID. And if you have very good eyes, you will see that this other user has the same user ID. So here our first real misconfiguration. Someone, there are 2 accounts sharing user IDs. All the other ones seem to be unique. We have a lot of zeros, but let's see what we find there. So what was it? Let me paste, it's easier. So we have this other user in /home ngbrsh, which we can access because it's the same user we are. Mainframe scripts, IB copy, SSH. SSH is my favorite because SSH gives you a lot of things, cool things you can do on a mainframe. And here we have SSH private key down here, public key, and an authorized key. Okay, the permissions are strict, so I think we can use this information to log on. We have to verify if this and this guy are the same, and they are. So this means that this person generated the SSH key directly on the mainframe. So let's try to use that key and see if the other user has some more access. So I'm just gonna copy this, get this here, and then I don't know, key, and I'm gonna paste it here, and I'm gonna save the file. So now that's my key, and I can, first of all, I need to protect it. And I'm gonna log on to the mainframe. What was the user? ngbrsh at z.bulgarian.local. Okay, it's working. We have another access. Now we have 2 users. Interesting. So, but the home directory was pretty empty, right? But something we didn't have before was DSO access. Maybe this user has DSO access. So we are going to verify that and also trying to find if we have other ways to move around by running TSOCMD and looking at some information. So we can run, I don't know, TSOCMD and then LU, and we see we can run this information. Actually, this will work even if we don't have DSO access. But now I'm going to run this racf search command here and see if we can submit jobs as another user. This is a very common thing that I find when to move around. There are users, I don't know, devs that have access to some testing or service account that can submit jobs like that, or there's, I don't know, we had this thing and the person stopped working here, so we need to keep it up running. And surrogate access is awesome because basically you can run things as another account without worrying about that. You just prepare a JCL, submit it, and you're good to go. And look here, we have access with this ngbaku user, and we can submit stuff there. So to simplify our life, I'm gonna upload some scripts to the mainframe, so I can run them there. So let me exit from here, and we have our mainframe scripts, which is let me show you some stuff we're gonna do. Mainframe scripts. Let's try with this one. This is a JCL job. This is a tool that Phil wrote, which prepares a shell. My job is submitted as ngbaku. Here we have the user here, and then it launches our script to get a shell. We're going to see how it works in a second. So let me copy this stuff up there. And I don't need password or nothing because I'm using the key. And then we start preparing a shell. So getting back down here to our user and going to mainframe scripts. here they are. So I can just submit our bind 3456 JCL. Job, blah, 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 submitted from path. What I did, which is in this case just for demo purposes, I told the mainframe, you have to listen on a TCP IP port, and I'm going to connect to you, and you're going to do whatever I tell you to. And we can talk with the mainframe. We can talk with the mainframe now on the network. Okay, and there's also a nifty help, inline help. So let's start with some information about who we are right now. We submitted this job as ngbrsh from down here, but right now we are ngbaku because we had the surrogate access. Okay, so let's see around what we have. So ls to list some datasets. And can someone spot something incredibly interesting? Shout it out. Come on.
Somebody must be seeing it, David.
Is there anything in the chat now? Okay, look down here. There's something cool in here. Very cool. Okay, I'm gonna take it.
Yeah,
so
I see some people shouting Rakev.
Yeah, you're shouting right. Rakev, and now we know what the hell Baku is. It's a backup service. And I do love backups. Everyone is super good at not messing stuff up, so they keep backup copies. Once I had issues with a mainframe, I had problems connecting to it, and I discovered that they had a very specific VTAM configuration that weren't pushed on the client side. So if you just connected to it, you got a prompt, but no application I did worked. And I found a backup copy of a VTAM configuration dataset. And from there, I figured out how to connect to the mainframe, and then I got access to a lot of cool toys. So in this case, we need this guy here. And as in a cooking show, I already prepared a JCL that does a copy of this guy to a Unix file, because in Unix right now we have basically full access. So I'm going to submit this copy.jcl, and it's submitted. And now I expect a file called download me in TMP. Let me make this bigger. And no, what the hell did I do? Let me see if it's the right file. JCL, and let me look at my notes too. Yeah, that's the one. Okay, let me try again. Submit copy.jcl. Submitted. Am I missing something? Hold on. So I have some shell I'm more comfortable with. So ls. Ooh, demo gods are not helping me out. I know why. Actually, I know why. You know why? Because this is a job that we submit in JCL. Look here. So I have nothing here. Okay. Exit. Wait for it. Ta-da! I was locking my own resources as an attacker. And this is something, this is a very good way to explain the feeling we have when we find this stuff. So you get access to a mainframe. Even if you're a normal user, you have got access to literally like 500,000 resources. You don't know what they are. You don't know how they work, but you have to figure it out. So this is very cool. We have a file here. We can read it. So let's just use sftp to connect to the mainframe, so we can download our file in a secure way. So we connect using the key again. I'm going to go to TMP and I'm going to do get download me. Okay, exit from here. Let's remove this and this and this. So this file, we make it, okay. This file right here is very likely a copy of the RACF database. In this case, it's actually a binary copy, an old backup of the RACF database. And so now we have, there's a common choice, which is cracking the passwords. And it can work, but again, we've seen they're using passphrases, and they're using KDF IES. So yeah, it's going to take a long time to crack stuff. But if you're looking at my files here, I have a couple of custom scripts to get pass tickets. Pass tickets are like one-time passwords to do something on applications. So let's take a look what we can do. So get ticket seeds from download me. And we have some stuff. Oh, look at there. We have ng baku TSO seed for a pass ticket, but we already have code execution as this user, so it's not going to lead anywhere else. But this is interesting. So now we are going to generate pass tickets from the download me RACF copy, and then we want ng agent, and we have a user ID, the application is TSO, and a pass ticket. So I'm going to copy this and use it to try to log on. TSO, where we ng agent, paste, enter. Oh, look at that. We have TSO access. So without any doubt, I'm going to do a LU. No password, no passphrase, but it's not interesting. That's the spot. You want special operations, and this agent user has special operations. I don't know why yet, but we can discover that. But I think it's a story for another time. So we have special operations. We are happy. So what we did was we used a common password across possible accounts, one logon attempt per account, and we got access to one account. That account had no access to TSO. So, okay, no TSO means we can go to an instance system, in this case, OMVS. In OMVS, we were able to move to another account because there were shared user IDs. And from there, we listed the surrogate access we had, and we found one account. That account had a copy, an old copy of the RACF database from last August, and we took the dataset, copied that in a Unix file, and downloaded to our workstation. And instead, for cracking passwords, we went for pass tickets. And pass tickets are awesome because now we can create passwords as long as we want to, unless they detect us and change the seed for the pass tickets. And we got special operations. Thank you to one of those ticket seeds. So we got access to one account that has special operations. I hope this was like okay pace. To be honest, I don't know how to pace myself, since most of the people here very likely knows a lot more about mainframes than I do. But if you have questions or other, just reach out. How can we protect ourselves from this kind of stuff? There are some. You should start simple, which is, if you look at this list here, is the same stuff you can recommend to someone running a Windows network, or I don't know, some stuff in the cloud somewhere, because it's the same thing. The point of most of the hacking is misusing features to do something no one else had been thinking about. So multi-factor authentication is great, especially if you have just passwords. Principles of least privilege. I see way too often there are accounts that have high privileges. Maybe it's just Unix, maybe it's just this, maybe it's just that, but they have way too wide access everywhere. And to know how you limit that, you need to know your stuff. And it means like you have your, I don't know, security administrator, your kicks, sprogs, you have your Unix guy, the web guys. All these people should work like in an orchestra. You have your specialties. Maybe you're not like in a DevOps kind of shop, but you guys should work together and exchange ideas, because when you are combining stuff, there are some new things coming up. So discussing helps big time, because that tells you what to do and what to monitor. And there's something more, and Harry will show you some stuff. There's some more you can monitor than just uptime and costs. And start with what you have in the box, because the features are there. There are paid features, of course, but there's a lot already in the mainframe. And then you can take it from there. So that was me. My name is David again. You can find me on Twitter, or you can just email me. And yeah, I'm always happy to talk about this stuff. I very much like it. That was my From Zero to Special.
Very cool, David. I see a lot of positive remarks. Awesome, great talk in the chat. And one question on someone having a good look at your temp folder, IEB download, question mark.
That was very likely a test I did. I wanted to simulate this scenario in a more hardened situation. So yeah, it was a test. We can talk about it, but it was just something there. It's probably an empty data set. I was trying to copy stuff without having proper access to OMVS.
Oh. And Christian's asking, please put your email in the chat, please, or slide the screen back.
So yeah, this, but yeah, I can paste it there. No worries.
Cool. Well, that means I'm up, David.
Awesome.
And on the side, you're up again, because for the mainframe people among us, let's see if I first can share my screen to get that running. Application window. I hope this will work. And then probably I can somehow make that go full screen. I hope that works. Now, for everybody who was already joining the mainframe.community Mattermost chat website, I did get a couple of people requesting, oh, where's that secret channel I can look along with? For those of you who created their accounts there, I hope this link works, but I think it looks like the chat kind of chops it off after the question mark, but please copy and paste that full link into your browser, and that will bring you to like a little test environment on the mainframe.community chat website. You can already see a lot of public channels that you can join. Please join those. They're numbered 1 to 6. And they will come into effect when we redo this attack from a bit of a monitoring perspective that Davide was talking about, basically to not leave you with the big fear of, oh my God, is my mainframe that hackable? And how can we stop this? So with that being said, I hope you all see my screen. I hope somebody, oh, I can monitor the chat here, that's cool. So we just want to reiterate what happened, and hopefully the question some of you mainframe guys and girls watching is, would we have seen this if this has happened at our shop, and if not, how could we? So I'm trying to address that a bit. A couple of disclaimers. The things I'm going to talk about are by no means an exclusive list. They're meant to get you started. There's a couple of bits of software and tools used. I'm using Splunk, which is a commercially available product through Splunk.com. We are using a ChatOps platform called Mattermost. Some of you have seen it. That is available at the URL mainframe.community. Most of the time that is not being used for mainframe security breach detection. And we're using two pieces of software made by my company to send data to Splunk and or Mattermost. So with that being said, what did David do here? Right, due to some OSINT and intelligence gathering, he found out our username standards. Right, all the user ID starts with NG, and then there is 2 letters for the first name, 2 letters for the last name. So that's a good point to start. Of course, when you start trying every single password on a single user, the mainframe will give you 3 or 4 strikes, you're out. But if you do it the smart and or evil way and just try one common password across all the users, you can try, well, if you do it twice a day, wait for people to go out for lunch, log back in successfully, you could do it about 4 passwords for every user per day. For this demo, obviously, there was one password that matched, but I think you guys get the idea. Yes, it's noisy as hell, right? You get a truckload of ICH 408Is. For those of you who are accessing the Mattermost channels, you can see them already. So all it takes is one correct password for further research. And that's what we saw happening. And we didn't see it coming. Right, so how can we stop this? The low-hanging fruit is monitor your system log. Those messages appear, and when they get there, it is, well, for one, you can think, well, I get the ICH 408I, nothing bad happened because the attempt to access the resource got blocked. Now, for the one-off Monday morning, I typed my password wrong. This is okay, but as you've seen in David's live demo, he is executing a gazillion of faulty logons. Now that should trigger some alerts somewhere. So how can we monitor the syslog? I think the wrong way is have someone look at the syslog all day long. We're living in the information age, so do something else. Right, you can send them to syslog, the syslog data to Splunk or any other event monitoring system. Create some dashboards, create some alerts, make sure that you're notified. You can send it to ChatOps channels if your company employs those things. You can send it to Slack, to Mattermost, maybe some other chat interfaces, or you can create your own in-house solution, system automation rules, or some other programs that do this. And of course, and this is leading into our proposed panel discussion at the end, that there might be a truckload of other ideas. As stated, this list is not conclusive. So my question to you is, let me just scroll to the chat here. I'm missing some questions. Sorry. No, it's my own chat. The question is, why are you not doing this, and what is your excuse? I do hear a couple of excuses at different places that I visit. Most people have a big drawer of excuses they can pick from. The most common one is that it's just too hard. Well, I hope by showing the attack again that it's not too hard. And the biggest complaint or excuse I always see is that there are so many of those, access denied messages, we can't tell the wrong ones from the really wrong ones. My reply to that is, why are they even happening, and why didn't you fix that in the first place? Because if you have so many of those errors, how are you going to, shift the ones that should worry you to the ones that you don't care about? So when you would be able to send your syslog messages to Splunk, you can create a dashboard, you can create alerts. This is a dry run of the test. You hopefully recognize some of the usernames on the right. And these are all faulty logons plotted in a timescale per user. If you would send them to a Mattermost or a Slack channel, you heard David's phone go crazy during the attack, going ping, 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 ping. That were all the messages popping up in the chat channel to warn people that something bad is happening, or at least could be happening. So I think we're going to have to do this attack again. So I'm asking David to go and prep this. I will ask everybody to watch maybe like on a side screen or on your phone if you have the mobile app already. But the minute David will start his attack,
I'm ready
get
whenever
ready
you
for it.
want.
Bring it on.
Okay, let me press enter then. 3, 2, 1, go. Okay, it's spawning the threads and it's starting guessing accounts and passwords. And it's going to be silent when I try it with accounts that are not there, maybe. And then we're going to see stuff coming up. Ooh. Ooh.
For those not sharing or not joining the channel, I will do a scary thing and share my full screen.
There's a lot of movement in the chat now.
Oh, for those people who can't see the public channels, you need to go and join them, right? You can, I don't know, there's like a little plus button somewhere to join the channels. Let's see, I will just share everything. Let's not be crazy. Share. So,
Do you want me to redo that so you can see it in real time? I just rerun the attack and it's been detected, but
I will just pop up the board here, and right over here we get a bit slow because of all this message spamming. You can see it is noisy as hell, but you do need to look for it. Right, we see all these invalid passphrase logons coming in. This one we'll see later. I'll just clear this out so it doesn't pop up as a new message. This one isn't that interesting. And this one isn't that interesting. Well, it is interesting because all you guys are joining it. Pretty cool. And again, right, we see, I think you ran the attack again. Let's look at our time frames, right? This is real-time refresh, so we see a gazillion of faulty logons happening. Now that should warn someone and make alarm bells ring somewhere. So if we've all seen that, I will switch back to the presentation somewhere. So we were a bit better prepared to detect, or at least get a hint of this attack forming. So what happened next? David logged on to Unix system services with a normal non-despict user, did some magic tricks with surrogate users and shared Unix UIDs to be able to run a job as a backup user. Downloaded a copy of the Rakef database and found another interesting user to play with. So again, we did not see that coming. So how can we detect those? It's going to get a bit boring, obviously. You're probably trying getting the trend of this, but you monitor the syslog. If one thing ZOS is good at, it's spewing out messages for everything that happens. If we take the ICH 7001I message, that will tell us logons, and it will also tell us job submission. So we can see when a user logs on or submits a job, and maybe we can use that information to, see why would the backup user run a job, preferably that would be a legal backup job, at 3 o'clock, peak hour on the day. That should trigger an alarm bell for someone. Again, we can make Splunk dashboards to see those jobs submitting. Again, screen prints from the dry run earlier. And we can get those messages in our chat channels as well, and that should immediately raise an alarm if you don't expect that user to be there. But there was more, right? David also submitted a job from Unix System Services. The question is, how many of those do you have regularly? Does your site submit jobs from the Unix side? Hourly, daily, all the time? Could we detect these? And should we? Well, I think yes, very yes, right? So with our syslog monitoring to Splunk and the chat channels in place, we can also see those. It's just a matter of parsing the syslog output in a correct manner in Splunk. And here we can see that he's using that brsh user from Unix to submit a job as ng Baku, at least in the job name. Now, again, that's worrying, because why would a user submit a job as a different user, especially this user, and then especially why through Unix system services? So maybe we can try again, but this time, of course, we're ready, right? Bring it on. Bring it on, David. Bring it on.
Should I submit right away?
Yes, or wait a few while I switch the sharing to the Splunk so you can see it coming in live. Give me a few seconds, please. Just do everything again. Why not? Right, so we have something here that hopefully should refresh. It's peeking at the other screen. For those of you trying this URL, don't, as it's blocked from the outside world.
As it should.
Yeah, it's now on a 5-minute window, so go ahead and submit, please. And I'll refresh this to a 1-minute window.
Just submitted, and I've seen that popping up in Mattermost.
Right, and now we see immediately we get this hit in our graph again with the full Enterprise Splunk edition. You could set up search queries that immediately push out an alert to your incident system, to emails, whatever. And probably we all see the message coming in here somewhere that a job has been submitted. Again, reasons to be worrisome. Here, stop, share. So next up, David was able to crack some pass tickets from that backup RACF database. And there's lessons to be learned there. Don't leave your RACF backups all over the place. But once he logged on with that super user, what was it, SetG agent, it was in the name, right? Because that user was special in operations, it was basically game over. And the attacker, and in this case, David, could do as he pleases with the system. Not to be going all Groundhog Day, but again, we can get those from the syslog. We can get some early warning on things happening. Maybe that user doesn't need to log on, and we can get into a whole discussion on why isn't that user blocked from logging on, in office hours. Maybe it only needs to log on in the weekend. Maybe it shouldn't be able to log on unless required. But again, as we've seen, we can get Splunk alerts, messages in chat, or other tooling that will help you to visualize these pending attacks. So time for some exciting conclusions. To log and report on what happens on your system is key. Of course, there are more sources than the syslog, like roughly discussed in Phil's talk as well. There are some things that generate a lot of SMF records you can report on, but if you cannot measure it, well, then you can't improve it. But make sure that you know what you're improving on, so you don't end up like Dilbert here, where you're just making up figures or drawing the raw conclusions on the facts that you're measuring. I think it's not that hard to start monitoring in case you were not doing it. It will definitely not prevent the attacks like you've seen today, but at least you'll know about them, and hopefully you will then start to get some procedures in place to stop these attacks while they're happening. And I think the little basic source code that David presented on the generic attack plan, get information, get the low-hanging fruit, exploit some vulnerabilities, gather more information, go to one. The same is true for the blue team. Start monitoring, see where they get through, adjust your procedures, get more logging in place, and go to one. With that being said, that's me. My details are here. Again, all the slides will be made available, I think, save for the PDF slides for Phil's Choose Your Own Adventure. And that's all, folks, from me. Any questions, remarks?
Just a question to David. When you switched over to OMVS, you went into the SSH directory. Did you use the private key in any way to get access?
Okay, so I did this. I moved to the directory and then I took a copy of the private key. And then with the copy of the private key, I then log on from my own machine to the mainframe.
Wow.
So there are three issues here, two issues actually. One is users with a shared OMVS user ID. And the other one is that the mainframe is a server. So I don't see many reasons to have an SSH key created there on the mainframe and leave the private key there. And the private key, if it's there, should be encrypted with a passphrase. Instead, I could just copy paste it and use the key as is because it wasn't encrypted.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Cool. Okay, I think that will kind of brings us to the end of the sessions we had planned for today. Just to reiterate, as Phil said, right, most, if not all of the speakers here today were part of the formerly secret society of mainframe hackers. We went out in the open, like Phil said, was it April or March? Some last minute security web conference we did. So seeing as we have a great deal of that community online here now, maybe you have some questions, maybe you want to know some stuff. So please, if so, shout out anything mentioned in any of the sessions we can discuss. We're all here now. Or any other questions, yeah, feel free, I would say. You can either use the chat or unmute yourself and speak up. Now I need to check, right? Is everybody lying in awe behind their desk? Did we fall asleep? Is there is it too hard to ask a question, or was it?
While we wait, I can catch up from a comment we get. Again, cool that you have a complete Sept hack and countermeasures. And I think it's a very good way to look at stuff. There's no silver bullet in security. You need to have multiple layers of security helping you out. You should code the stuff properly, do your automated test on the code, do your manual penetration testing, do your, vulnerability scanning. You should have your detection. But those things should work together. If you just try detection is like a cat-mouse game. You can't see everything at the same time because it's too much information, so you have to filter. On the other hand, if you have broken stuff and you detect that someone stole your RACF database, but they already stole it, and it was last night, maybe it was better if it was impossible to steal the RACF database. So if you have one thing you can get back to you is, work as a team, combine competencies, discuss. I always like to discuss with these guys because everyone has a different background and we learn from each other. And it's the best way to go ahead. I like to talk with, someone programming kicks transactions in COBOL and a system programmer and so on, because we learn from each other. It's fun and useful. But everything was crystal clear, it seems, right? No questions.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing, no? Anything you want to add, Phil, or something knowing you can throw in to get a good discussion started?
Well, knowing me, I think to what Davide was saying is you need strong prevent and detect controls. You can't just rely on preventative controls. We've shown multiple times today that those can be circumvented, but they have to exist, right? You can't just throw your hands up and say, this is impossible. We're just not going to protect anything. We're going to throw all of our eggs in the detect controls, right? Detect controls being your logging and monitoring. That's not going to work either, because you're going to get inundated. And on the other side of the fence is who's the people who are watching your logs? Because I can tell you in my experience, it's Windows guys and girls, but it's Windows people. And those people are not familiar with mainframe environments. So they might see SMF records with ICH in it and not know what that means. They might see an alert that says APF authorized, something happened, and not know what that means, and not know that that is an emergency. They might not understand that a RACF dataset was accessed and downloaded because they don't know what RACF is. Like, that's been my experience. Has not been like, yes, you can set up a system that takes all your logs and forwards it to Splunk. That's easy. There's like 3 products that do that today in real time. But so what? If no one's watching the data, and even if you are, so here's the dilemma, right? In TSO, when you look at a Type 80 record in SMF, does anybody know where to find the IP address in that record? Henry, don't speak up. Yeah. For the group here, does anybody know where in a Type 80 record you can find the IP address of the person that caused that violation? Anybody? Is the chat broken?
I think there's an awesome comment on this. We have a special department for this.
The special department knows it. No offense, Willem. And I see someone saying, wasn't that in hex format somewhere?
So the issue is that the IP address is not in your ICH in any Type 80 record, right? You have to, but your terminal ID is. And so you have to look in your Type 119 records to find the IP address of the person who's launching the attack. How long is that? How long? So I know that, and I'm assuming a bunch of people in this meeting know that. Do the people whose job it is to monitor those logs and have dashboards and single pane of glass systems set up by a bunch of contractors, do they even know what a Type 119 record is? And if it's not been set up for them to automatically grab that information for them, do they know where to look without bothering the mainframers? Because you saw, I mean, like, so a bunch of examples today. Yes, it's noisy, but I've been able to go from nothing to taking over an environment in maybe 2 days. And if it takes your team 4 days to do the investigation, at least you know you had data stolen, which is better than not knowing. But that doesn't help you, right? So it's this whole, like, I've been saying this for years. 5 years ago, there was no way to get, well, there were, I'm being hyperbolic, but 5 years ago, the maturity of moving logs off of your mainframe SMF environment into a centralized system that everyone's using for their logging was immature. And we're at the point now where it's slowly catching up to the maturity of Windows and other environments, where it's logging into your central Splunk, and then you can do all kinds of queries and stuff, right? The issue is the other side is the indicators of compromise is not mature yet, right? And there's lots of people working on this problem, but the indicators of compromise just aren't there yet. Like, how do you, if anyone adds anything to an APF authorized library, that should generate an alert and someone should follow up. If anyone tries to read the RACF database, that should generate an alert. You know, there's all these things, but even then, do the people who are monitoring the logs know what to do with that information? So they get an alert, and they have a playbook. And if that playbook doesn't spell out exactly what they need to do, they're calling you up to get that information, and that's not always going to be something that they can do. So Johan's comment: is there a set of Splunk best practices? Not that I'm aware of, unless someone has written one in the last year.
No.
The only thing I do know about that is that right now the best way to do that is to take two people, one like me or Phil and one like Henry, hack the mainframe while Henry helps you set up your Splunk.
Yep.
So he filters the stuff for you and gives you the right alarms. So we do the attacks, and while we do the attacks, we tell you what we are doing so you can fine-tune your detection system, which is something they do all the time. In some places in the distributed world, where they basically, if they've been already hacked, or if they hire me and their SOC didn't see me coming and jumping all around the network and stealing stuff, then we do this together, and it's very useful. You cooperate. It's not the attackers against the defenders. We work together and feedback one each other. So right now, as far as I know, that's the only way. And it will be the way to stay ahead also, because monitoring is kind of reactive, right? You react to something that's happening. So you try to detect that as early as possible. And then you need routines to manage that. Because the attackers, I mean, if someone wants to steal your money or whatever you have in the mainframe, they're not going to do that on Monday morning. Maybe Monday morning, okay, but not Tuesday morning. They're going to wait for Friday night.
New Year's Eve.
Yeah. I've been in an incident investigation that started on the 24th of December, and the intrusion was done, and they were happy from their point of view, on the 6th of January, if I remember correctly. And that's very common. My colleagues fear Friday at 4:30 p.m. the people working on incident response, because it's when it happens quite often.
Yeah, in North America, I've been to Share and asked them, is there not a working group that Share could form to create these best practices for alerting and generating the playbooks for everyone to use? And then that was 2 years ago. So that's how far that got.
Yeah.
So, but it's something that needs to happen because no one else is doing it. And no offense to the people on the call, but if the three of us put out one, who's going to listen? We're not a standards body. We're just people who enjoy researching the platform.
And it's also one of the things. Remember the obligatory opening Guide Share Europe slides, right? The Dutch
Yes.
Security Working Group is reforming, so to speak. We need a new chair. We need a new link into the IBM organization or another security-like organization. Maybe we could even use like a Splunk liaison. But see the questions here and your remark, well, we've discussed this as well a gazillion times. That would be a good thing to do as a community, right? To take one of those problems and own it and try and deliver something to improve the situation. And I think this situation has a lot of opportunity for improvement. Let's put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, again, a big shout / cry for help, as I did earlier. Right, the security work group is reforming. Yes, we are a Dutch-based working group, but operating internationally with GSE, and as you see, outside of those boundaries as well. Lots of linking pins to what I would call the security peeps in mainframe land. Phil, David, Jake, thanks a bunch for doing this first session here, and I hope that especially on the part of the Dutch people attending here, my mailbox will be overflowing with alerts of too many emails saying, "Oh, let's get soon next week and discuss this and get to something." Don't worry, I don't expect that to happen, but at least a couple would be very nice, right? Because that's the gist of our working group, to get together and improve beyond the enterprise boundaries. because like we've seen, these tools are not custom fit for bank X or insurance company Y or government organization Z. It the security issue is broad across the whole board for the mainframe.
Yeah, I'll just say this: the open system world has been centralizing and reviewing logs for 10, maybe 15 years in terms of trying to generate alerts and catch bad actors as fast as they can. And they're still not there, but they're 15 years ahead of where the mainframe is today. I'll leave that as my parting thought.
Well, thanks.
There are a couple of questions we haven't been addressing. One, what about hardware security, Huawei, Cisco, HP? I guess you're referring either to like VLAN segmentation or like next-gen firewalling and stuff like that. It's another layer of security, so good if you have those, but you have to implement them correctly because those can be misconfigured too and be weak too. We were on an engagement, red team exercise. The customer has no idea we are testing that except like the CISO or something like that. And we were, so like you don't want your, I don't know, printer to talk with the mainframe. Very likely an office printer doesn't need to reach the mainframe. So you segment your network using one of those devices. But then you forget to harden the device itself and maybe one of the protocols is open. And we, the bad guys, reconfigure that device and open and configure the switch to be like a login method that forwards all the traffic of your Windows environment to or whatever you run to us. And we start analyzing the traffic, and from there we get passwords. And for passwords, you jump on a file server. And from the file server, you find documentation about the mainframe, and then you reconfigure your security appliances to give access from this printer or whatever we have to the mainframe, and then you go there. Or, I mean, all the stuff we have been discussing today is always the same. It doesn't matter what you're trying, if it's thermostat or if it's a, I don't know, Windows box or whatever. You have to put it on the network, have routines, and having people who cares and is what you said, curious about that stuff, so they can harden it and make it safe. Basically, everything is the same. It's the same thing. You look what you can do, and you try to secure it and to prevent misuse, which is easier to say than do. But again, teamwork helps.
Here, I'll take that real quick. If your concern is someone is taking your router, if your supply chain is insecure and you're worried about bad actors and planting malware in your supply chain, and that is your legit threat model, there's really not much you can do, to be honest. Like if you have a Cisco router and the NSA intercepts it and puts their own firmware on it, you might be able to tell based on which UPS center it went through in the States, but that's a crapshoot. I don't think you can tell. And even then, like we're talking about detecting threat actors. If a nation state is coming, it's going to be real hard. If they've decided to come after your organization, they're going to get in. It's just a matter of fact. There's no really way you can prevent that from, like, we use an example here where I work of like, why wouldn't we just get someone hired in who works at one of the stores in retail? Just get them hired, then they have access to the network, they have a username and password, and then we just pivot from there. Right? That's something a nation state could do. They could intercept equipment midway, but there's things you can try to do to prevent that, like not having. Someone made a joke. If you're worried about nation states like Cisco, Huawei stuff being compromised, you create an onion and put like 6 different of them in front of each other, and that way one nation state can't access the other nation state's malware, and they can't get past the bad mainframes. But that's about it, right? There's not there's certain, you have to think of your threat model.
And that's where using like monitoring helps you.
Yep.
Because they're gonna leave traces anyway. They can compromise every single thing you have from different vendors.
Exactly. There was another question here about application security pen testing. So I talked briefly about Apache. We decided not to go down that route in the Choose Your Own Adventure, but any web application is going to need a web pen test. If you have any web-based applications running, whether it be Kix or not, it needs to go through just you can hire out organizations that will do web application pen testing, and it's the same as if you did it on an open system. It's no different. Maybe some of the attacks, like a local file include. I found a web server once that had a local file include vulnerability, and that was only because I recognized that it was using dataset names for one of the URL options. But otherwise, it's just a regular pen test, right? So that there's no reason why you couldn't do web-based application pen testing the same way you do today. For things like Kix and whatnot, it is an evolving area. I know some of us in the Mainframe Hacker Society are researching it as we speak. The whole reason I wrote the Doge Kix transaction thing art piece was so that I could learn and get a better understanding of how Kix interacts and COBOL and what type of attacks would be successful against that type of environment. So, do you have anyone else have anything they want to add?
I will add that, I've seen people writing about Burp, Big Iron Reconnaissance Pawnage. That's like a good tool to test X3270 application. It's not a jack of all trades. Most of the time when I'm testing application, I have to write custom scripts messing with the protocols. And so I had a person come to me, okay, I want a class on for our developers to know the risks when writing mainframe application. But basically, that's the same of a desktop or web application. You have your inputs, you have your outputs, you have your secrets, and that's the same thing. The only difference is BTH, the BTH in Sweden. I've seen something written there because I work with them sometimes, but I had no idea they're doing research on that. Oh, okay, we need to talk. But yeah, you have mainframe specific knowledge about exploitation or how stuff works, but the testing methodology is the same. I wrote like a statement of work the first time I started doing this professionally. And my first reaction was, yeah, take any statement of work for a penetration test. We do exactly the same on the mainframe. It's the same stuff. It's a computer with a network stack. It's the same stuff.
Yeah, and there's some questions on, and that also counts then for COBOL programs, right? And any other program running, you need to properly test it, right? And not just see if it does what it's supposed to do, but especially see what it does when it gets, these faulty inputs, weird modes of execution, fuzz it basically.
Yeah.
What happens?
Yeah, the attacks might not be the exact same, right? Like to do password stuffing against TSO is different than if I do password stuffing against a web server just behind the scenes, but it's the same attack. And it's the same thing against a Kix-based application. I could do business logic attacks. I could try, like you said, Henry, you could fuzz it. There's all kinds of things you can do that would be standard in a pen test that you would try. I will say, I'll put a huge caveat on like COBOL-based stuff. There's just no one researching it. The number of people that research potential COBOL vulnerabilities is maybe can fit on one hand, right? And so you have thousands of people looking at vulnerabilities in web apps, and you whole communities around the world doing it, and you have a handful of people looking at COBOL. So I don't know what COBOL vulnerabilities look like right now. I know I can think of some that I've seen in the wild, but and by in the wild I mean like stuff I've written poorly. But I don't. It's just a matter of time and expertise until people find more.
Well, now the good side, or the brighter side to that is that if we're not talking COBOL programs behind a Kix web server, I'll keep using that word from now on. When they run in their production environment, 9 times out of 10 they are being run by scheduling software with their JCL in hopefully controlled and monitored libraries, and in order to breach that and make that COBOL program do something else, you're already in the spot where you don't need the COBOL for exploitation. You're already there, right? The minute you can change the production JCL, why go after some old non-source code available COBOL program where you're already in the system as a very elevated user and just run some of the the unholy programs to further elevate your privileges? You don't need that application attack vector that much at that point.
Yeah, I mean, if I have an account that has read access to DB2, why would I bother with Kix when I could just go access DB2, right?
Precisely.
But conversely, if I have an account that has access in Kix to resources that I care about, that I want to see, I might not. This is like a business logic attack. I might not care if I can access the file system or DB2 if I can look up prescriptions. Say, if I can look up people's if I'm a bad actor looking up people's prescriptions and I hack a mainframe used for health services. If all I'm accessing is the Kix interface, I can automate that and download everyone's prescriptions, right? It's not it's not that difficult to do with some Python and X3270, right? So it just, again, it all depends on your threat model and what you care about protecting and detecting.
Yeah, and picking the right things to go after for protecting. Like I stated, if you suppose you do spend, I don't know, a day, a week, a month, a quarter of a year, completely bisecting some piece of COBOL code that runs in the batch, not with a web front end, just sitting there doing its thing, chugging away, and you find this uber 0-day, right? You can run it with parm equals make me special, and it makes you special, right? So you still need to elevate your privileges to be able to run it that way, in the production environment, that you don't need that exploit anymore. So getting, protecting that way in gives you much more bang for your buck than spending 4 months doing a full fuzz on a piece of COBOL.
Yeah, I think Mark gave a talk or shared a story, I don't remember, where it didn't matter that the attacker didn't even know that they were connecting to a mainframe. They just found credentials for an IP address that was the username and password for a DB2 server, launched a JDBC connector, and downloaded the whole database. They didn't even know they were connecting to it. Now, if you talk to IBM, no one hacked any mainframes. Like they'll swear up and down no one hacked any mainframes in that case. But that data is still gone. Right? So
yeah, that's the case. I did the capture the flag at a Wolverhampton University with students who never saw a mainframe. I bring the ZPDT, they get to play and do whatever they want to do. That what is it? The Office Space one. You've seen it.
Yeah.
This one girl shouts out, going, "Henry, can you help me here? I don't get this machine." I'm like, "What happened?" Well, she goes, "I downloaded everything off this box." I'm like, "You what?" And I mean, her skill set on the Linux side is way beyond mine. And she just, basically imaged USS. And she goes, "I can't read this." I'm like, "No, it's all AppSedic." Oh, but then they chug along and they make such great steps. And they don't and that's the potential good actor. But like you say, the bad actor sometimes doesn't know, and most of the time doesn't care what the platform is. He just wants, that bucket of gold and get it out.
I also have a war story. It's going to be partial details. I can't talk about it very much, but I did successfully exploited an injection in a COBOL program. So making the COBOL program do what I wanted instead of what the developer wanted. And it's the same stuff. Validate your inputs. Is this an address? Then you should expect some certain types of inputs. Is this, I don't know, number? Then it should be just digits. Is it a date? Then it's digit and, I don't know, a slash or a minus, depending on your localization settings. But yeah, do your validation. Don't trust the input you get, and don't trust it even if it's coming from DB2, for example, because there could be some malformed stuff that is perfectly okay in the DB2 table, but when it gets back in your program, then it's starting to do something else. So whatever comes in, validate it and check it if it's what it's supposed to be. If it's not, find a way to manage that. Just my 2 cents.
There's a question from Vivek about what, from a blue team perspective, if someone was developing monitoring tools, what would be beneficial for the user base? Like what would in my experience, having done so what we're talking about here is purple teaming, right? Where the red team does an activity and the blue team tries, and you're doing it together. So you generate the alerts and the blue team sits and watches to see what they can see. And then when they say, we didn't see something, you tell them exactly what you did, and then they figure out how to detect that. In my experience, the hardest part is linking. Once, say you're able to detect something happen on the mainframe, the hardest part is linking that back to a workstation off the mainframe. So even like you might have a user ID that did something sometimes, not all the time. And if you do, even if you have that user ID, you have no idea. It will take hours to trace it back to figure out what workstation on your network you need. Who do you need to go talk to? Since the user that was compromised said, I was not using it at that time, how can you prove them wrong? Right? Like how can you, the evidence says that they were using their account and they said they weren't. Finding out their workstation is very hard. The other challenge, especially during password spray attacks, is how do you tell what users were compromised during the password spray attack? Right? Like, yes, during a time period that a password, during a time period that 4,000 accounts were attempted and 3,992 failed. What were the 8 that succeeded? Were they valid logons that people logged in during that time period? Or was it the attacker that logged in? Do you just deny all those accounts? Do you lock all those accounts out and then do the investigation? Right now, it's hard to determine. Those are the things that are the hardest in my experience. But I'm curious to see if anyone has any other experience.
Yeah, I think it also relates to a question a bit earlier going on detecting anomalies and using AI and all the cool stuff happening in distributed world, I would say. But like you stated, right, they're ahead of the game, right, compared to us mainframe guys, male/female for guys. But yeah, that I think correlation and detecting anomalies would be a good thing. I don't think that is something you can make generic. I strongly feel that it is always site dependent, mainly because of the multitude of different ways sites protect their resources, set up their things. I have seen sites that were kicks heavy and had not a single kicks protection in RACF, right? Because they had a web front end to it that did it for them. So there was just one user who was allowed everything, and security was, how would you call that, federated to the other platform. Now, that's a whole different monitoring ball game than when you have everything in RACF, when you have, I don't know, do role-based access setup, or if you've already migrated to a more DevOpsy, users that switch with rights during, it depends. But yeah, I think if there would be the golden bullet, I think that would take a threat model and give me the report on, how my threat model was breached or potentially attacked. But again, I see that more as custom fit work. unless you're, a large outsourcing company who hosts a gazillion different clients with the same setup. But again, then it will work for that same setup, and not that will then won't work at your employer or one of my clients.
Yeah. Again, without some baselines from somebody, we could make all kinds of different recommendations, but there needs to be some baseline, some benchmark somewhere that says at a minimum you should be looking for this, and this is how you do it. And that just doesn't exist today. I think that's the issue. But go ahead.
I've got just another question to David, again about SSH. That is one thing you would go to if you want to get in, and usually these implementations are not really integrated into the mainframe very well. Let's say storing private keys within the RACF database usually isn't supported. You mentioned it should be encrypted, but usually at the mainframe, we just put it in the RACF database. With these SSH applications, you can't, in some cases, do that. So, yeah.
I'm not sure if I get your question. Was like, how can I manage basically my keys? I still want to log on to the mainframe, and then maybe from the mainframe go ahead on another node.
It's basically, yes. Basically, how do I manage my keys well?
Okay.
You mentioned it should be encrypted, but yeah.
Okay. First of all, a fairly simple approach is to hold on. My puppy again complaining. She got in and now she's here. Okay. Anyhow, so you should have. Okay, let's start with a simple case. I'm I don't know, developer working on the mainframe. I generate my SSH key on my computer, Linux, Windows, whatever it is, and I protect the key with a passphrase, which is going to be locally on my computer. And then I store on the mainframe just the public key in my authorized key list. When I log on to the mainframe, I just SSH, unlock the key on my computer, and log on. If I need from that LPAR to move to another LPAR, because of your network design, that LPAR has access to another SSH service, there's a thing in SSH called proxy jump. I'm going to type that in the chat, which allows you to tunnel your traffic to the first SSH connection and reach the second one, but you're never going to expose your key. There was an older solution called SSH agent forwarding that you should not do, because if someone has UID 0, they can basically steal all the private keys from their users. If you have a bigger, more complex setup, you can get in other stuff like certification authorities and then sign your client certificates with certification authorities, and there you can have a lot of other limitations, like for how much time the key is valid and other stuff. And you can integrate that in RACF key rings and manage that like a CA in RACF, or you can have your CA offline somewhere and then you port the certificate of your certification authority in RACF, and then you can manage all the stuff. But then I'm going to talk for like 40 minutes and people's going to cast me out. But we can talk about it if you want. Reach out. I'm happy to discuss.
I think it's also one of the valid, at least concern I have in the mainframe sphere is that this, well, SSH is one of them, but the whole Unix system services is, to a lot of people, a very uncharted territory from a mainframe perspective, and therefore you sometimes see configuration mistakes, and 99% of the time they are not meant to be there. It's a real proper mistake, not malicious internal actors, because it's just a different material than the traditional mainframe people are used to. And yeah, you see that a lot. But basically, I think based on the hack step that we made in the demo, again based on real world examples, it shows that we need to extra educate our users, and luckily SSH protects us enough that the keys need to be in a 600 folder, and they can't be 775. but again, sometimes you would see key files lingering about, copied to and fro all over the place. It's this hack is partially the result of an uneducated user, in my opinion.
So just about the this is like back to the COBOL thing. So COBOL has like, so you statically define all the memory at the start, and so you can't really do the things like, I think this is the case. You can't do like with C, like memory, like a lot of the memory errors, but you can call a C program and pass it a pointer in COBOL. So if you might be able to find if that's the case, you might be able to just find the normal C memory corruption problems just through COBOL, I guess.
Yeah, perhaps I can explain a bit. One of the things that we have is that we're also looking at ISPF applications and COBOL application, for example, and the requirements are basically the same. It's an application, so you should pen test it. And you have some examples of, for example, when you have ISPF applications that you use for administrative purposes or something that can have, for example, a DB2 background. So you're interacting from the ISPF application with DB2. And there's a certain security model in place that allows you, the ISPF application is kind of controlling what you can do with the DB2 database. But if that same authorization can be used to directly update the database, then one of the pen tests would be to look at ways to insert data into the database without going through the ISPF application. And that's an example, but I don't, what I was kind of looking for, if there is some kind of approach list or an approach of things that you should consider when handling COBOL applications or ISPF applications. I think that's one of the problems. It's mainly, we're very used to doing audits, but we're not used to just sitting down and coming up with ways to abuse a COBOL application or abuse an ISPF application. And I think we should try to figure out more ways of kind of also getting a standardized approach to pen testing mainframe applications.
In my opinion, so what you described, it's possible to proxy your request through an ISPF application and get free access to the DB2 backend. So I would like to suggest you to take a look at OWASP.org. OWASP is Open Web Application Security Project, and it's more about application security in general. But what applies to a web application kind of applies to the mainframe too. It's the same kind of attack methodology, and the vectors are pretty similar.
Yes, agreed. In the past, I've also, we'll take a look at it. Thank you very much. But in the past, I've always also seen with a test that, for example, with MQ series, we have a lot of applications, of course, that use, get their data from MQ, that if you can find a way to get information on that channels, you're basically listening on a channel and you have a queue in the background. So there sometimes are other ways to get information onto an MQ queue. And that's also something that perhaps if you use MQ series, you should be aware of the fact that perhaps other people find ways to put information on those queues. And that's difficult. Most of the time, we just rely on the fact that it's a secure channel. But if somebody manages to put information on there, it's most of the time just processed. And that's a lot of other things. I think that when you, perhaps that's my approach now, that we were going to try to do just a mental exercise, just bring people together and start thinking of ways of, what could be possibilities for people to abuse the application. And not only from the outside, but also from the inside people, and just do it this way and try to come up with reasonable ways of pen testing the application.
That's something David said as well, right? The whole concept of red teaming and blue teaming is, at least as far as I see, not really a standard thing in the mainframe world of people, because we have our security, the real security team is usually a security operations center, which is physically and also from a knowledge point of view from a very large distance from the mainframe crowd within the enterprise. The people who are the security administrators are usually, um, well, people who administer access and roll out procedures. They don't really focus on security. And then you have idiots like you and me running around thinking, hey, how can we go and break this? And I think if that is more formalized, then you would have a good approach, because just breaking it isn't good enough. You should also show people what happens when you break it, show people how they can see breakage happening, and get that higher on the agenda. But again, well, me, Eric, I've preached about this a lot of times at various clients, and the minute you see RMF data portal being accessed by all the high authorized system users and they're using self-signed certificates, right? I don't see the gain in doing a COBOL program assessment. Fix those things first.
Yeah, the effort gain is very important when you're threat modeling, because we like doing research, and maybe it can be fun for one of us to find a complicated attack, but it's not what a real threat actor will do. They go for the quick, easy path of least resistance. So start from there. I wouldn't target a COBOL application trying to exploit it. I do COBOL application or Kix application testing during my job, but if I'm out for the money, I will just escalate and then get access to MQ, DB2, or maybe FTP or a job pushing out stuff. That's way, 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 way easier most of the time. You can just escalate, and you don't need to be special operations. You need to get access to one user. And it happens way too often that you can guess something that give you access to a synchronization product, NJE, something like that. And that's way more powerful than a single COBOL application. I guess Phil has some stories about NJE.
I mean, story is more like I just caution people to not let anything talk to NJE outside of LPARS and whitelist those IP addresses, because man, NJE is so dangerous. It is like there are so many angles to locking it down that nowadays I just say whitelist your LPARS. If you're going to use NJE for anything, whitelist the IP addresses that connect, and don't let anyone else connect to that port at all.
Yeah, but I think it's this is all. Of course, you're focusing on the outside threats, but I think also you're trying to figure out ways to. And it's this example of an ISPF application that I've seen examples where you have a little Rex executive that then it starts sees if somebody's connected to a certain RACF group, and in that case, they're allowed access to the application. It's not. You wouldn't want to do this for a very important application,
Yeah,
but
that's very dangerous.
these kinds of checks are in place. And of course, you can easily bypass them if you know these kinds of things are done. So sometimes you have to do.
Yeah, I think this discussion is really interesting because it's the challenge that we face with this platform, because the research is so immature, right? Like right now, people are researching the infrastructure layer of attacks, right? It's not, and the guidance for applications is immature because there's no tooling, there's no guidance, there's no nothing other than maybe some stuff that this group puts out, or some stuff that a few others might put out, or maybe a military organization puts out, right? There's nothing. It's just a matter of maturity. It'll get there eventually, I hope, right? But it just takes time. It's like when I first started doing this, I could count on 2 fingers the people that I knew that could do mainframe hacking. And the number of tools were non-existent, like the support. So it's just, and I focus on infrastructure because that's what I like. Other people focus on other areas because that's what they like. It's just, as you know, the saying of standing on the shoulders of, God, I don't want to call us giants because that sounds stupid, but standing on other people, like other people have done the research so that other people don't have to, right? There are thousands, millions of Windows exploits. And because those platforms have been locked down, people were forced to look at application layer, right? And we're not there yet with the mainframe. We're still at we're looking at the infrastructure of the operating system, the network protocols. You know, like NDM is ripe for people using it to do attacks. Same with MQ, right? It's just, again, the resources and the number of people researching it is low, and that is a limited resource, right? So it'll get there. It just takes time.
Yeah. Well, seeing as our allotted time has passed, and I also see the participants gradually declining, people probably having, other things to do, plant stuff to do, or just really passing out, because I think we're having a really good discussion, a good talk. I would like to thank you all for attending this first GuideShare Europe Netherlands Working Group meetup. I think we can call it a meetup. I'll just put this on the screen again. Hopefully you can see it. Double check that. Yeah, you could. On the mainframe.community website, we have a private channel for this working group. So if you're a GSE member, shout out, and we can get you into that one. For our mailing list, that's for non-members as well. Are you in the Netherlands or in Europe and considering to join the GuideShare Europe? Please follow the links. We will make the slides available to everybody attending. Dear requested David and Jake to please send me the PDF versions of the slides so I can package them and send them out. With that being said, I think thank you very much for attending. I know I had a blast. I hope you guys did so as well. And stay tuned for more security workgroup meetups, and hopefully with a new chair next time, because as stated, my time is limited as well between all the things going on. So if you feel up for this or you want to give this a stab, shout out and reach out to me or Martijn. Martijn's in the chat as well. He's our main IBM liaison on the board for GuideShare Europe. So I'll be looking forward to your applications. If there's no further questions, thank you all for attending. I will stop this recording and the session, and until next time. Bye!
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you for having me.
Aha, pleasure. Thank you, Phil.